Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome to Statistics 201. These are going to be the lab videos, and you'll need to watch these lab videos before each lab. So your first lab is going to be Lab 1. During this time, you will meet your lab instructor. You will get access to the statistical software that you'll be using, and you'll get a good introduction to that software. So in Stat 201, in most weeks, you will be meeting for lab, but just make sure that you're checking your schedule and the syllabus because some weeks you'll go to lecture instead of lab. Okay, so the reason that we have a statistics lab, we want students to actually be connecting the concepts that you're seeing in lecture to real applications. So you'll be collecting data, exploring the data, visualizing the data, pulling useful information from what you gather. And so you'll get some practical uses in lab, and you'll also get to work on your collaboration skills. So during lab, it is highly encouraged that you work with one of your classmates because that is allowed. Everyone will turn in their own work, but you can work with someone else, and because that's how the real world is as well. You typically collaborate on projects and work. Okay, so like noted, typically lab will meet once per week. However, there are some weeks where you'll go to lecture instead of lab. And then your lecture instructor and your lab instructor will talk about the makeup policy as well. Okay, so for Stat 201, during the introductory email from your lecture instructor, you should have gotten a link to a survey. And then in that survey, you answered some questions, and we were gathering data to use in Lab 1. We were gathering data, and then we have created a data set to use in Lab 1. So in Lab 1, you're actually using a real data set that we collected from all 201 students, all the students registered for 201. And then we compiled all of the sections into one data set. So sometimes it'll make it more interesting if you're using like applicable data, right? Okay, your lab instructor will direct you to the data set. You're going to be using, in every lab, in most labs, if you need statistical software, you're going to use StatCrunch, and your lab instructor will guide you how to get there. Access is included whenever you like pay your tuition because you get that access to the ebook and the homework, and that includes StatCrunch as well. Okay, if you're familiar with Excel, it is very similar. The interface is very similar. And in most labs, you will be using StatCrunch. Not every lab, but in most labs, you will be using StatCrunch. And this is a way to explore data and make inferences and visualize the data. Okay, you do need a lab manual. For every lab, you must bring your lab manual. This will be given to you the first week of classes. However, you'll submit everything through Blackboard. So all of your work needs to be turned in on Blackboard. You will be graded using Blackboard. And then this is just a good rule of thumb. Every time you submit an assignment on Blackboard, you should get an email confirmation. If you do not get an email confirmation, you might want to double check that you did submit your work, because if you don't get a confirmation, that means that nothing was submitted. So just make sure you double check this. Okay, so these intro videos, in these videos, I'm not going to go through go step by step. It's going to be just a general overview of what to expect because you're supposed to watch this before the labs. So this will just be what to expect, give you kind of just a general process, general idea. And then when you're in lab, you'll go step by step. You'll use the lab manual. That's why you need the lab manual, because the lab manual has step-by-step instructions. So please follow these steps carefully. You want to follow the steps because if you miss a step, you might not be able to answer a discussion question or something like that. In the lab manual, we have also, for every lab, we have included a section called Lecture Recall. So we have compiled relevant information that you've seen in lecture into that section, just in case you need to go back and you need a refresher, because you'll be using concepts from lecture in lab. So that way you have that when you get there. When you get in the lab, you have that section. Let's say you forget this piece of information, it will most likely be in the lab manual for you. And then of course, your lab instructor can always help. They are there to help, and also your fellow classmates. You can work in groups, and we encourage you to work in groups. Okay, so with Lab 1, this is just an intro to the statistical software StatCrunch that we're going to be using. So your lab instructor will give you the details to pull up the current data set because we update it every semester. So it's not going to be this data set. This is just an example of what it'll look like. We encourage you to work with a partner. So you're going to pull up the data set, and then you're going to follow the steps in the lab manual. So step 1, if you look in the lab manual, part 1, you need to identify the variables. So nothing in StatCrunch just yet. Classify each variable, and this is from chapter 2. We discussed this in chapter 2 in lecture. So you're going to give each variable either categorical or quantitative. If a variable is quantitative, remember we need to further classify this as discrete or continuous. So you'll start with part 1, that's part 1, classifying the variables. When you get to part 2, this is when you'll use StatCrunch. Choose one of the categorical variables, make a graph, calculate some numerical summaries, which we talk about in chapter 2. So make an appropriate graph, calculate some numerical summaries, and then give the output. And remember, this is all of your output, all of your graphs. This is going in Blackboard. You're submitting everything through Blackboard. So parts 2, 3, 4, and 5, you'll be creating graphs. Calculating some numerical summaries and putting your output, you can put it in a Word document and then submit that Word document on Blackboard. So that is the basis of Lab 1. We're looking at a data set. We're visualizing the data with some graphs, calculating maybe a mean, a median, a standard deviation, and then you're answering, well, actually there are no discussion questions. So that's what you have to do. Make some graphs, calculate some numerical summaries, give the output, and write an observation. In the rest of the labs, there will be discussion questions. This one, you're just submitting your output. Alrighty, that's the end of this video.